Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's currently June 10th, and I thought I would take this opportunity to give you a Cool Flowers garden tour. About 3/4 of my cool flowers are currently in bloom, and I thought we would take a look at the ones that are blooming, and I can provide you with some information in the description section on the varieties, when and how I sowed them, and when you can expect them to be blooming if you're in a similar situation. So let's get started. So let's just start off with this absolutely stunning imperial blue larkspur that was direct seeded in the fall. It turned out to be approximately, I believe, 5'9" tall at its tallest point there. And this is my favorite larkspur to grow, imperial blue. It is purple, but it's a beautiful deep purple. Some of them are doubles like this one, and some of them are single. But the hummingbird absolutely loves the larkspur, and I just enjoy having it so much in the garden. I have a few other varieties I'll show you as well. I'm gonna need to review my notes because I know I planted fancy smoky eyes, but I'm not sure if this is that variety or not. Let me show you another one in the driveway garden. This larkspur over in the driveway garden would be the QIS pink. That's really nice, but I just haven't been using it as much this year, but it's a beautiful flower. Also sown in the fall is this beautiful stand of Bachelors Buttons. And I think I sowed this Bachelors Buttons with you in the Cool Flowers video. And the variety that we're looking at right now is called Black Button. It's a beautiful deep maroon color that I just adore using in flower arrangements. And then I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this blue variety called Blue Boy, which is a true blue flower out in the garden. And isn't that just looking delightful? Now I'm going to move on to cool flowers that were directly sown in the fall, but that I chose to transplant to a secondary location in the spring. So if I had kind of just left some of these flowers in place, they would all be blooming now. But because I transplanted them, that's why some of them are further behind. But look at this gorgeous Orlaya filled with not only the beautiful white lacy flower heads, but also these amazing seed pods. I find that Orlaya can be a little bit tricky in terms of harvest, so definitely I always wait now until it's nice and mature and until it almost looks like an open umbrella. But if it's just really not working out for me, you know what? I just use the seed pods and they always seem to last. Also sown directly in the fall and then moved into my garden borders is this beautiful Nigella. This one is called Mulberry Charm. And I have a few different varieties in this area. Some I'm not sure on the name because they're from a friend, but they're all beautiful. If you want a blue Nigella, you might want to check out Miss Jekyll. Also, Bridal Veil is a great white Nigella, but they're just so much fun, and you can see there's not many left here because I've cut the majority of them. I have just a bit of Sweet William left over here in the borders, and this is another one where I started the seed in the fall. I planted it out as a transplant, and then I moved it over here into my garden borders in very early spring. And there's not much left because I've been using so much of it this year. And here we have some more of those umbel flowers. We have the beautiful Dara, and this is one that I did sow it in a bed in fall, but I wanted to move it into the garden. So you see it here now. It's not blooming yet, but in just a few more days, it will be these beautiful deep maroon purple umbel flowers. And I find as well with the Dara, I think the instruction on most websites is to wait until they're flat to harvest, but I give it even maybe one more day until it looks like an open umbrella, and that seems to make a really big difference, especially if you're selling at a farm stand and it's really hot outside. So now let's move on to cool flowers, which I directly sowed the seed into the garden about 6 weeks before the last frost. First up here is Cerinthe major, also known as honeywort, and you just can't beat these blooms. It almost has an opal effect with all those colors, the purple, the almost blue, the green, beautiful leaves on this as well. And I just plopped that seed directly in the ground. The Bupleurum is looking really gorgeous, and I'm going to be harvesting a lot of this for bouquets at the stand, probably following this tour and then later on this week. Kind of going over at this point is my Saponaria with beautiful sprays of pink flowers, and this comes in white also. And this just couldn't be more easy care. And this is brand new to me, so I'm leaving some of it in the garden to see what its seed pods look like. The corn cockle is starting to bloom, and it almost reminds me of a perennial geranium flower with foliage similar to Bachelors Buttons. Growing up all the bamboo posts, I have sweet peas. These are ones that I directly sowed into the garden. I just stuck the seed here in the ground about 8 weeks before the last frost. I also grew some on bright and cold on the porch, and I don't see too much difference between the quality and size of the plants at this point in the year. So I believe this one is called saltwater taffy from Renee's. And then over on this bamboo pole, I have a beautiful variety called Blue Streamer, and that one was from Baker Creek. This one smells really, really good. Not necessarily a great cut flower, but still I would consider a cool flower. I don't think it's in cool flowers, but I plant my poppies about 8 weeks before the last frost, and I just direct sow them into the ground, and they're just starting to bloom now. This one is called Mother of Pearl. And I mean, just look at the awesome pollen on these poppies. This one almost looks like it has blue pollen. I took a picture of one the other day and the pollen looked green, and I showed my husband. He wasn't nearly as enthused as I was. And look at this one, stunning with the reds and the whites. So I believe these are all Mother of Pearl, but basically I'm just getting the whites and the reds so far, but they're just getting started. And then the last seed that I directly sowed into the garden 6 weeks before the last frost is the Starflower. It's not blooming yet. If I waited just a few more days, it probably would be blooming, but I'm about to harvest all the Snapdragons, which we'll see in a second. And so I wanted to shoot this tour before they're all gone. But these are great and make these absolutely darling globe-shaped seed pods. This patch was directly sown. These ones were planted out as transplants. And I think from now on I will direct sow them and not start them inside. It's not really a fair comparison because these get some shade, but nevertheless, just seeing how good those directly sown ones did, I'll go with that from now on. Now let's move on to cool flowers, which I started in very, very early spring, and I'll actually go in order of how I started the seeds inside, which were started first. So let's start with these gorgeous foxy foxglove, which I started in very, very late January, maybe the first week of February, and planted out into the garden about 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost. And I have a patch here that the bees are adoring. And I also have some here coming on in the $5 garden. I started both of these Snapdragons together with you guys, and it was probably very early February to mid-February. This beautiful one is called Bridal Veil, and this is why I really wanted to do the tour, because I need to harvest all these at this point, and I didn't want us to miss seeing them together. These are also the Snapdragons that we pinched and then we propagated the cuttings. So this is when you can expect them to bloom if you kind of follow my timeline. And then this one is my new favorite Snapdragon, especially in terms of a pink Snapdragon. This is Legend Light Pink, which I believe is a group 1 snap, and it bloomed about 2 weeks before my bridal pink snaps. These really are just absolutely gorgeous. I love Snapdragons so much. And of course, a Snapdragon can talk to you. So there's that to love as well. But we'll go ahead and cut all these. We're going to cut this entire bed, and then we'll get another flush off of them in a few weeks. Right next to the group 1 and group 2 Snapdragons are these white rocket Snapdragons that I planted at 4 inches, and I didn't provide them with any kind of support. So far that's turning out good. I was a little concerned that maybe I'd have some disease problems at 4 inches. So far so good, but I'll definitely keep you updated on how that goes. Here we have a bed of Strawflower, and some of them have started to bud up, but not fully in bloom yet. This is a combination of the purple red And then I'm also growing the tall mix over from Roar's seed again. I didn't film this, but I went ahead and for the second time I planted either didiscus or didiscus. I'm not really sure how you say it. Some people just call it lace flower, but I've tried to grow didiscus in the past before with almost no success. So I'm trying again here. The anemones were all done, so I gave those a try. But what I have here is my Scabiosa, and this year I'm growing Oxford Blue. No blooms on these yet, but I think I'm gonna try a fall planting of this Scabiosa next year and see how that goes. I have 2 patches of Ammi just not yet blooming, but some of them are starting to get their bloom stalks. And I believe I planted this out into the garden with you guys. A lot of 4-lined plant bug damage on my Ammi, but it looks like the plants were able to handle it, thankfully. Now let's move on to one more category, which is cool flowers, which I planted out last year and which function as perennials. So we have this beautiful Colorado yarrow. I think we have a Rocky in here somewhere. Rocky, are you in here? All different colors. I always struggle with having Delphinium come back here in my zone. I'm not really sure if it's my zone specifically, but just how wet my garden stays. But you see, I do have 1 Delphinium left. Oh, wait, 2 Delphinium. But that's really why I grow a lot of Larkspur, just because I do have so much trouble with Delphinium here. We have some Feverfew coming back from previous years, but I did lose a lot, and so I planted a lot more, and I'll show you those in a sec. I'm hoping you can see the plants here, but we have this Feverfew to look forward to, and I grew some new varieties, so I'll show you that when it's blooming. Well, thanks so much for joining me for a tour of the 2022 cool flowers. I think I'll follow this tour in about 2 weeks when all of the later cool flowers are in bloom. But I hope it's helpful to see what you can expect the beginning of the 2nd week of June if you give this method a try. It's definitely worth trying, and it's so much fun. And I hope that by seeing how these things turn out, because I'm pretty sure we seeded this Larkspur and the Bachelors Buttons together in fall, that you can kind of get a feel for, you know, the difference between a fall sown plant and a spring sown plant. So I hope you'll give hardy annuals a try. I think too, you know, the older I get, the more books I read, and I read a lot more of Sarah Raven's work. This seems like a really normal concept over there in the United Kingdom, where at least how I grew up, the concept of planting cut flowers in the fall was never talked about. I had never heard about it before. And it really just changed my cut flower world when I gave it a try, because, you know, the proof is in the pudding, as they would say. And really, there is the pudding. And the final thing I want to share with you is one thing I'm going to try differently this fall. And that is, I'm going to try, instead of planting in rows, which I always still have back here in the raised beds, I'm just going to broadcast the seed and not thin it, because look how close together these Larkspur are. I think I did go ahead and thin these Larkspur to about 4 inches down here, but even with the Bachelors Buttons, I didn't thin those at all, and I did have to corral them, but there's no support on these Larkspur that are really close together, whereas where I have Larkspur sprinkled throughout the garden, I did have to go ahead and support them. So with all that being said, I want to wish you a great day out in your gardens. Let me know what's working for you in terms of cool flowers, and I'll see you sometime soon. Bye!